Hi, it's Zach McClellan. I'm here to do my humanities engagement. I'm doing option 13, the art talk. So I'm choosing to do literature from this just for a couple of reasons. I feel like literature has more of an impact on people. Not necessarily that music doesn't, but I think literature is the key thing that there's a million different ways to tell a story, and there's a million different perspectives and a million different angles that if you rewrite a music or if you rewrite a symphony or a song, it tells a story. I'll give you that. But there's only so many ways you can retell that music. Um, and I believe that in literature there are endless amounts. You've never seen someone write a sequel to a song like you'd have a book. You don't have a trilogy of songs. Um, So I think that's really special. And the one I wanted to focus on is Charles Dickens. Now, Charles Dickens was born a little bit after the American Revolution. He was born a little bit after the French Revolution as well, in the 1800s. But he had this knowledge about him, this kind of discernment, and he basically calls out everyone. And I think that in his book, A Tale of Two Cities, which is it's a really classic novel, it's a really good piece of literature. I think he has a lot of comparisons about his day and age and about how it was right before the French Revolution to his day and age. I think we can see a lot of that currently in America. His book starts out like this, The Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, and it was the epoch of fear. It was a season of light, but it was also a season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, yet the winter of despair. We had everything before us. We have nothing before us. We're all going directly to heaven, but we're all going directly to hell. He uses it the other way. He refers to it as going direction the other way. But in short, the period was so far like the present period that some of its noisy authorities insisted on being received, for good or for evil, in the superlative degree of comparison only. Now that last part Dickens had too, and he was kind of comparing that to his current time to right before the French Revolution and what that was like, and he's basically saying like, guys, we have all of this ability, we have all of this promise to our future, but we also have a potential downfall lurking in us. So I kind of just want to go over that and how I think it compares to today's day and age. At the very end to start with, some of its noisy authorities insisted on being received. If we look at the American political scheme, and I'm not picking sides, this isn't what that's about, but we have extremists on either side, and there's really no headway. We have extreme conservatives, and we have extreme liberals, and there's really no moderation anymore. But all parties insist on being heard. And I think until we listen to understand instead of forming rebuttals and trying to attack people on social media, we'll never get a clear answer. But, at the beginning, he starts it out by saying it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it's the age of foolishness. We're at the peak of human society as we know it. We have the best technology, we have the best medicine that surpassed any culture behind us. We have the abilities that no other culture has, or had in the past. Yet, fear is at an all-time high. Suicide, all-time high. Social anxiety and depression are all-time highs. So we have this foolishness. But it's the worst of times. But it's also the best of times. And I think that's what Dickens is trying to say. Like, yes, we have all of this stuff, and you're seeing the bright side, but this is reality. We can't live in a world full of technology. We've seen hits to social engagement. And I think that has a lot to do with anxiety and depression. People don't talk anymore. We have a tendency to close ourselves off. He goes on to say it was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope and the winter of despair. Now what I like about this, I started to read this and I started to think about it. He says the spring of hope, the winter of despair, but he never gives hint as to which one we're going into. And I think to Dickens, it's a metaphor for the changing tides, for the future of our state. we can very well go into the series of spring. We can go into a spring of hope. But if we don't watch where we're going, it's going to be a winter of despair and a winter of sadness and more fear and more rejection. It says have everything before us. Technology is at our fingertips. The whole world is mass connected through the internet and social media. But we have nothing before us. It's kind of like what Abraham Lincoln said, united we stand, divided we fall. It doesn't matter how much we have for ourselves, but if we're not together, we have nothing. We just have material goods, and we know how material goods work in God's kingdom. Kind of segueing to the religious aspect, it says we are all going directly to heaven, but we are all going directly the other way. I kind of took that as a social media in today's age, because if you look at all of our social media stories and our posts, we're world changers. We're out there affecting people every day, which, don't get me wrong, I think it's very good. But I think a lot of it is, what's the word? I think a lot of it is fantasized. I think a lot of it is kind of dramatized, dramatic, drawn out. Just because we post Bible verses, we're expected to live up to those standards. And when we post these verses and we don't do anything, we look like world changers. We look like we're on fire for God every single day. But you're not what you post. And God sees you. He sees your heart and your soul and your challenges and your trials, temptations, and how you overcome them. So I think that's kind of what he was saying, is that everybody puts on this front that they're such a good person and that they're a good Christian. God save the Queen. We love the good Lord. But our actions don't speak that. Our actions are hatred. We hold this hatred inside of our hearts for other people. And so I think that's what Dickens is trying to say through kind of these metaphors and the irony and the symbolism and all of this, is that, Bon Jovi said it. He goes, it's all the same, only the names have changed. And this isn't quite in the context of what he was talking about, but I think it's very relatable too. Dickens pointed out that right before the French Revolution, the same things were happening. History repeats itself on a continual cycle. And if we don't change where we're going, if we don't, I don't want to say derail the train we're on, but we have to switch the path. We have to go from that winter of despair to the spring of hope. We have to go enter in that epoch of belief that we're going to do great things, and that God is still at the center of our nation, the center of our hearts, the center of the church, and that if we are the hands and feet of Christ, then not only do we say we're going to go directly to heaven, we act. We are the hands and feet of Christ. We become the hands and feet of Christ. And I believe that's the way, through our superlative degree of comparison only, that Dickens was trying to say through this whole thing, is that you're going to face trials and temptations of many kinds, but it's how we act, how we face those, and how we overcome those through God. Kind of like the story of Job. That we don't put on a front that we love God, but real down we don't act it out. So, thank you.